There's something undeniably romantic about a French garden. The elegance, the history, the sense of timeless beauty. And after spending 3 months immersed in the stunning landscapes of the French countryside, I've uncovered the secrets that make these gardens so enchanting. Hi, I'm Anna Fable. I've been in France for the past 3 months, and one of the main reasons that I've been here was to immerse myself in and learn about French gardens. So I'm taking everything I've soaked in and sharing all of these powerful secrets with you. So I've been here in France for 3 months, and my health is really important to me. I'm a very active person, but staying active while you're traveling can be a little bit difficult, and I'm not gonna lie, I have kind of fallen off of my consistent workout routine since being here. That's why I'm so grateful to Get Healthy UTV for sponsoring today's video and helping me stay on track. Get Healthy UTV is an amazing online resource filled with workouts, health tips, and fitness inspiration. It's more than just exercise videos, it's a supportive community of women who are working toward feeling stronger, healthier, and more energized, all from the comfort of home. As a gardener, staying limber and kind of agile is really important, especially in the off season. And if you've been watching this for a little bit now, you'll know that I kind of tweaked my back last year while I was gardening. So my main kind of goal right now is to really strengthen my core and get that core strength really on top of it so I'm not tweaking out my back during this gardening season. One of my favorite workouts on Get Healthy UTV right now is Lindsey Baumgren's 10-minute abs and glutes workout, because it's just 10 minutes, it's super quick, and it really gets your heart pumping. Plus, they have so much content to choose from that you never feel bored or stuck in a rut with your workouts. So since I'm on the road and don't have access to my usual fitness and workout equipment, I'm especially excited to try their body weight burner calendar to stay on track. The best part, Get Healthy UTV is for everyone, no matter your fitness level or goals. Their trainers are so motivating and they're constantly adding new workouts to keep things fresh. I'm seriously loving it and I think you will too. So here's a special deal just for you. They very kindly offered this. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the video description will get a full year of premium membership to Get Healthy UTV for only $1.49. And that's valid for new members only. Huge thanks to Get Healthy UTV for supporting this channel and helping us all stay fit and healthy. I visited so many different gardens since we've been here, from grand estates, from chateau gardens, to public parks and casual Mediterranean-style gardens. We've seen all of the favorites like Potager gardens, Parterre gardens, lots of topiary, and wild and beautiful shrubs and flowers. But first things first, I want to sort of talk about the essence of a French garden. The feel that you have when you're in those kinds of gardens. And one major aspect is the sweeping views. That everything is done with such intentionality about the eye of the visitor to the garden, or even the eye of the gardener as they meander through their garden space. It's really about that trajectory. You know, we've talked about creating vistas and viewpoints and almost taking yourself as the painter and sort of positioning that painter where you would want a painter to sit in your garden and sort of paint your gardening space. This feels like how the French have created these gardens. That sense that there's this grandeur, that sense that there's a bigger awareness of the whole. Even parterre gardens, which are designed to be viewed from above, from either a terrace or from the sort of second story of a home, or here in France, the first floor, because actually here the ground floor is considered 0. So the second floor in the States would be the first floor here in France. So a lot of these parterres are designed to be viewed from the first floor. And that kind of gives you this sense that there's this awareness of the bigger picture. What are we actually doing with this space? Everything feels so curated and cultivated in such a specific and artful way. And in that way, it is this beautiful dance between humans and nature. And they do this so wonderfully together. And I think that combination, that relationship, is really what forms the backbone of so much of what makes French gardening fantastic. The French gardens are a masterclass in elegance. They have a sense of order and refinement that almost feels poetic. And why is it so captivating? When you see a French garden, there is just sort of this awe-inspiring moment. Well, a few elements that the French really play with in terms of gardening are symmetry, formality, and structure. And this can be seen to great effect in some of the grand gardens of France, things like Versailles or the Château du Villandry, where, every element is perfectly balanced. And at Château d'Arignac, which is near where I'm staying here, the geometric patterns create this mesmerizing tapestry of hedges and flowers and gorgeous water features. But it's not just about grandeur. These gardening principles can be applied to any garden, no matter how small. Now I want to start talking about garden design here. Because the foundation of French gardening lies in its structure, planning is everything. Imagine your garden as a series of connected rooms, each with its own specific purpose and its own specific focal point. And then playing with symmetry and repetition. These things really bring a sense of cohesion and harmony to your gardening space. And when you have these clean, defined lines, you can really play around with what plants you want to use at the edges or maybe within the flower beds to kind of soften these very formal structures. And these clean lines aren't just about the pathways, the hardscape, and the kind of bigger garden as a whole. This comes down to the minutiae. It's all in the details. When you're up close in a garden like this, you really see how straight and clean the lines are in the topiarized bushes or hedges, in the clean cuts of those gorgeous boxwoods, or the rounded structures of some of those topiaries that you see freckled throughout a property. There's this cleanliness, there's this clean, clear aesthetic that really allows you to feel like the sky is sort of opening up before you and you're standing within the weavings of a tapestry. Everything feels intentional in a French garden. Everything feels on purpose. There is this real sense of understanding that this is my painting and you are welcome to come and view it. Welcome to come and interact with it, walk through it, observe, take in all the sights and sounds of this beautiful space. Now let's talk about some of the essential elements of a French garden. Plant selection is crucial. Classic French gardens favor plants that bring both structure and romance. Think fragrant lavender, romantic roses, beautiful billowy hydrangeas, and cleanly clipped boxwoods. I'll talk a little bit later on about more plants and specific varieties of flowers that are often featured in French gardens. But when you can pick things that really serve both your space and your taste, that's really what French gardening is all about. Knowing what you love and then bringing that into the space. A next key element is water features. Water features really play a starring role in the French garden. This can be seen in beautiful fountains, in more kind of modern architectural style water features, maybe a rectangular stair-stepping waterfall, or the beautiful, one of my favorites, sort of reflective ponds that sort of sparkle and show you the specific images that the gardener wants you to be looking at reflected in that beautiful water. And back to that poetry of French gardening, there are so many sort of metaphors as you move through the gardening space. They might have a bench near a water feature like that for you to sort of contemplate and take in that reflecting pool as a time to really reflect on your memories, on moments that you've had maybe in your own garden or the moments that you've shared in that garden thus far. It's really a time to sort of reflect and then look at the reflection of maybe the sky or whatever scenery piece of statuary, or some beautiful trees that might be on either side of that beautiful reflecting pool. But whether it's a structured fountain or a gently bubbling stream, the water adds a sense of tranquility and movement to the gardening space. And then there's the hardscaping, beautiful statuary, beautiful winding paths and stone walls. These are really the bones of the garden. And these statues don't always have to be grand. Sometimes you can just have a little corner where a small special statue is sort of tucked away, or you could have a few finials leading into a new aspect of the garden. And this is so gorgeous because I feel like in French gardens, there's really this emphasis on allowing nature to kind of take over. So there's lichen all over these beautiful stone statues and ornamental stone pieces. And that just really gives you a sense that the French garden is embracing nature while also having the human imprint, allowing the lichen to take over and give you a sense of the age of the space. And there is nothing more romantic than seeing lichen kind of spreading out like lace on a beautiful stone statuary. It's incredible. And those pieces of statuary are often the punctuations for your sightlines, for these beautiful vistas. The sightlines in French gardening are just so important. You can sense that it's just such an amazing way that they guide you through the gardening space. There's a hedge here, and then there's a sightline over this way, a piece of statuary down here. So they say, don't look this way, look this way. You know, don't go this way, walk this way. No, come around this path this way and then open up to this beautiful view here. Everything feels on purpose. Everything feels intentional. There are some gardens that I've been to in the past that doesn't so much feel like the perspective or experience of the guest is considered as much as maybe some of the views from the home. But as you're walking and moving through the garden, in a French garden, it just feels like they're so clear on the experience that they want you to have. They really cultivate and craft that experience for you with the placement of benches, with the placement of pathways, with the placement of hedging, with the placement of large structural trees, with the placement of little windows through which you can spot maybe some beautiful color or flowers, or a little chicken topiary, which is so cute. But the garden is guiding you, creating an intentional and immersive journey. The next really key element to a French garden that I've noticed is the emphasis on seating and the emphasis on eating. So from what I've seen, you're always going to find places to sort of sit back and really take in the garden. Take in and have those little moments of pleasure. It's so fantastic because what can often happen as gardeners is that we're always working in the garden, and that's our experience of it, is the doing of it, the doing of the gardening. But sometimes it's really important, I think often, to sit back and just be. Let the doing go and just be in the garden. Take in those moments, be in the present, and really experience this beautiful paradise that you've created. And so often in French gardens, you'll see an emphasis on a gorgeous place for eating, a gorgeous place to sit along your walk. That's just sort of spread throughout the garden in a way that really helps you understand the importance of taking in your surroundings as you're moving through a space. And I think that's really a key into French culture. You know, the French joie de vivre is really about embracing the present and leaning into joyful moments. So setting up a garden to be beautiful, productive, and structured, yes, but above all, a garden to be enjoyed by the gardener. So you are as much a part of the garden as any of the plants that are in it, and so are all of the animals. Sustainability really seems to be a big part of especially modern French gardening. An emphasis seems to be placed on putting the right plant in the right place. And this originated from Beth Chatto's garden in the UK, but arid plants are placed in a dry location. That Mediterranean planting style, you know, it thrives in these drier climates. And so that's what the emphasis is on, things that are gonna do really well in these spaces. And then moisture-loving plants are going to be planted near, let's say, a riverbank. Now this contrasts the sort of domination of the gardener seen in centuries past, but the mix of old old design elements with new ideas is a beautiful marriage in the modern French garden. I mean, you can see this all around with the presence of bug hotels and bug houses, freckled throughout the countryside in parks and public and private gardens. There was even a beautiful garden for the birds called La Chambre des Oiseaux in the gardens of D'Erignac. Now let's talk about common French garden designs. French gardens are built on centuries-old design principles, and certain key elements appear over and over again throughout history. So let's explore some of the most iconic ones, some that you've probably heard of, but some you may not. First, the parterre. This is a symmetrical arrangement of often very intricately designed flower beds and low hedges that create stunning visual impact, particularly when viewed from above. So a parterre garden is very similar to an English knot garden, that's K-N-O-T, which when viewed from above sort of looks like a knot of different plants kind of gathered together in a very specific pattern. So you'll very often see boxwood or yew that's planted in specific designs and then very neatly and tightly trimmed so that it maintains that very intricate structure of the parterre. And again, this is often planted beneath something like a terrace or right in front of the manor house or estate where you're viewing it from above. Next up, we have the potager garden. This is a French kitchen garden that blends beauty with functionality. So this is very similar to an English cottage garden. They're going to have a combination of plants and herbs and flowers all together. Very often these were sort of smaller spaces, and companion planting was really the emphasis of these garden spaces so that things would sort of help each other out and really helped out the health of the entire garden. And it adds color and fragrance, inviting pollinators and creating a very romantic atmosphere. And even in these gardens, even when you had maybe more of a functional garden like a potager garden, you still very often see beautiful benches or pieces of statuary, or you will see a water feature in this space. So it wasn't about industry separated from the beauty of the garden. It was about weaving the two together. Next up, we have le jardin du fleuriste, or the florist garden. This is also known as the bouquet garden or the cut flower garden. So this is a dedicated flower garden that's bursting with blooms all throughout the season. Some very common flowers for these spaces are things like zinnias and cosmos, dahlias. We've seen sedum, and then spring color like daffodils and hyacinths. And very often they're done in rows, sort of like row crops of flowers that you can walk throughout. And similar to the potager garden, very often these will be near each other. But these gardens are both that incorporation and integration of fragrance, color, and then functionality and beauty. And one tip I actually have for beginner gardeners, if you have a space and you're sort of overwhelmed by all of the things that you're having to learn about gardening, how tall or small a plant gets in order to know where to put it in a gardening bed, where the shade is going to be in your gardening bed, what to do with all of these different things, how to create the path, how to create the trajectory, if it all feels a little bit overwhelming to you, what I would suggest that you do is actually start with a florist garden. Start with a bouquet garden where you're just doing cut flowers all throughout. And just pick your favorite varieties. This way, as you're kind of going through the season, you're going to learn so much from having these varieties, but you can kind of take out a lot of the different elements that might be tripping you up, like how to create the path, how to do this, how to, all you're thinking about there is you just do rows of these different plants and then just learn from it. Everything will be temporary in this space, or it can be permanent for you. But if you don't like it, or you think, oh, this one's actually not doing well here, maybe if I move it into a sunnier spot, it'll do better. You're sort of limiting the amount of new information that you have to tackle. So that's just a little tip. And next up, you have topiary. Topiaries are actually one of the oldest forms of garden design. They date back to 44 BC, and they were really practiced in ancient Rome. Just kind of molding and shaping the cypress into different interesting shapes. And topiaries are fantastic for inviting interesting structure into a gardening space. They can either serve to guide you along, so the don't look this way kind of energy of creating similar things planted all the way down so that your gaze goes straight past them, or they are the central point toward which you are moving. So a beautiful topiary structure can really call you down. They can be very playful, they can be very fun, you know, chess pieces, little animal topiaries, or they can be just these grand, fascinating structures. You can see topiary done, yes, in evergreen, in box and yew and holly. And you can also see topiary done with deciduous trees, with things like hornbeams and other shrubs whose leaves are going to die back in the wintertime. And these carefully pruned shrubs and trees add an element of artistry, reinforcing the garden's formal structure and guiding the viewer's gaze. Now I really quickly want to talk about the history of French gardens. This is obviously a very long topic, so we'll narrow it down just to the things that are relevant to this video. So the story of French gardens really begins with its inspiration from Italy. During the 16th and 17th centuries, French nobles traveled to Italy and returned with a love of the structured beauty of Italian gardens. The first major adaptation of this style appeared at the Château d'Annay in the mid-1500s, where architecture and garden design were coordinated for the first time. One of the earliest shifts to the grand French garden aesthetic was seen at Dompierre. So the traditional moats that once surrounded the castles were transformed into ornamental water features, a hallmark of what would become the classic French garden. The gardens of Château de Richelieu and later Vaux-le-Vicomte took these principles further, extending views beyond the garden itself. So this is really where that borrowed landscape comes into play. And I've seen this in every single garden that we've visited. Cutouts to sort of show you the landscape beyond, cutouts in the hedges. So you have that formal structure, but then that intentionality of blending that garden space with the outside landscape. And these were designed by André Lenôtre, and they marked the beginning of this new era in garden design, one defined by precision, grandeur, and limitless perspective. And then came the masterpiece of Versailles. When Louis XIV took the throne, he commissioned André Lenôtre to transform the palace grounds into a statement of absolute power. And you can see that it's sort of that domination over nature, man's domination over nature. I'm going to keep everything clean, everything will be clipped. I have the control over this entire domain. And this is really when French garden design became synonymous with symmetry, with structured parterres and breathtaking sightlines that extended to the horizon. This style really dominated European garden design, inspiring landscapes from Russia to Austria. But while French gardens followed a strict order, they were not just about formality. They were settings for life. They were settings for celebrations and grand events, for even theatrical performances, maybe hidden and tucked in by a beautiful grove of trees. Creating a French garden at home. Bringing a touch of French elegance to your own garden doesn't have to be overwhelming. What I would suggest is that you start with structure. Start with the structural elements that you want to define your space. Carve out your space with hedges or paths. Be really intentional with your space. Choose the vistas and plant things around that. And a vista doesn't have to be an acre. A vista can just be a few feet. It's just about encouraging the eye of the viewer or your gardening guest to go where you want it to go. And then choose a few classic plants. Put in a small water feature, even if it's just a little fountain tucked away for the sound of the water. And most importantly, design with intention. Be really intentional about the way the garden feels, the way it looks, and the way that the gardener or guest moves through the gardening space. And I think, as with any kind of gardening design, just knowing yourself really well, knowing what you like, what colors you like, knowing how much time you have to spend in the garden, knowing what you like to do when you're in the garden. Do you like pruning? Do you like weeding? Do you like deadheading? What do you like to do in your gardening space? Or do you like simply sitting back and relaxing? That's really going to make a big difference on the kinds of things that you're going to be creating. But that formal garden design paired with some of that loose attention to romance and beauty is going to be the pairing that really makes your garden very special and very French. Très chic. So I wanted to show you some of the plants that are really popular here that perform really well in French gardens, because a lot of them are similar to the United States. So I have this magazine here. This is Avantage, which is a French magazine, but this is their garden edition. Spécial Jardin. And I wanted to just show you a few of the ideas in here, just to kind of give you a sense of what these gardening spaces feel like. Gosh, I could just sit here with you and go through all of them. Roses are a very big part of this, and a lot of this is just very, very, cottage garden. But if you can see here, some of these beautiful plants. You have this gorgeous foxglove, a very interesting foxglove. We talked about this recently, but a bachelor's button in pink. This is what, agapanthus? Yeah, Pichun violet. Then you have a hollyhock here, some beautiful double wisteria, and a gorgeous rose. So these are all things that we can really play around with at home. A lot of these are beautiful garden plants that will do fantastically well in the United States. So that use of color is shown so beautifully here. You have these gorgeous maroon and soft pale yellow lupins paired beautifully with some daisies and some white alliums, and then a pop of a darker lupin over here, and then sprays of grass throughout. So there's structure, there's order, but there's also kind of an abundance and a wildness to it. Then clematis and foxgloves, a beautiful pairing here up against this wall. These gardening elements are quite easy to do. And with a lot of plants, we have them back home. And here, we have a woman just enjoying her gardening space. So make sure that you have places in your garden for you, places that you can sit. How is the garden serving you? Can you relax in their gardening space? This is a really gorgeous potager garden. And so here we have this beautiful un merveilleux mélange du vert et du mauve. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but like a marvelous mix of greens and purples, mauves. So you have lupins here, euphorbia with this zingy green, and then you have gorgeous things like beautiful lacinato kale, an evergreen that's tightly trimmed. But see, when it's in the middle of the season, you can't really tell that this is topiary, when you're trimming it into a shape, trimming the box, this cedar or whatever this is into a nice clean ball. Then you have what looks like some broccoli and some purple cabbage here. So you're really playing with the colors of the foliage and then the colors of the flowers with this beautiful wisteria here. Wisteria is everywhere, but there's something about the romance of those gorgeous pea-shaped flowers just cascading down on these beautiful racemes of flowers. Oh. Don't you just want to be there? Yes, please. And then you have tons of different varieties of clematis. So clematis would be a great one to add to your garden if you really want to play around with French garden design. Obviously, Mediterranean style gardens, have those very, very kind of quintessential plants that really can handle drought and love hot, dry conditions. Things like lavender, things like succulents are going to do really well, cacti. But look at all of these clematis that they have here. Absolutely stunning. And then there's just such a presence of nature and embracing of nature here. In the garden near us, the public garden near us that we walk to every day, we see this little bug hotel that's so sweet, and then little parks and gardens just built into trees. Really lovely. You can do them in these little subtle ways. I think I'm definitely going to do that when we go back home, incorporating all of these elements into our design. Sage. Inviting sage into the garden. So you could do sage or your salvias. This is a gorgeous sage that is called Sauge Cassis. So this is a beautiful salvia. It looks almost black. That's how dark these purple flowers are. These tubular flowers, and then it's a really glaucous blue-green foliage, and the calyxes are that kind of blue-green color as well. Oof. Yes, please. Yes, please. But tons of varieties of sage, wisteria, roses, beautiful roses, and then aromatique, or herbs, you know, gorgeous herb gardens. Very often potagers will have herbs. Very often parterres can be made with, instead of using boxwood as the hedging plant, you can use an herb like a rosemary. That's something I really want to do, is use rosemary as the border plant, because I think you can have a hedge of rosemary and it looks gorgeous, especially if you have a combination of some upright rosemary with some procumbent rosemary, some prostrate rosemary, because they bloom these zingy blue flowers so early in the season, and they are fabulous for pollinators, and the foliage is gorgeous. It smells fantastic, and you can use it for cooking. What more do you want? This is probably my favorite image from this magazine. Ugh, I just love that. I love the blues. See that color palette? It's so intentional. That's the thing about French gardening. Everything is so intentional. Blues and purples and whites with that pop of yellow at the top of the chamomile there. And that gorgeous combination of all of these. You have edibles mixed in, you know, some herbs. This is Nepeta. This is probably some type of perennial sage. You have what looks like maybe like a green mist ammi here in the corner. It's beautiful little embellifer, so gorgeous. A soft buttery yellow rose here paired with a dark purple clematis. Oop, can you see? And that color combination, everything in this space is so intentional that it just looks like a magical, whimsical little spot. Two neatly trimmed evergreen balls here, and this is a purple one here. Look at that. It's just so well done. Purple and green and blue and yellow. Intentional, soft color palette. It doesn't look overly done. It doesn't look, you know, there's still this abundant feel to it, but you have the hardscape of the brick wall in the background. That's just one of my favorite images. This is fun. Let's just hang out and look at this gardening magazine. It is well thumbed, I can tell you that. Russian sage is fantastic. Planting things in the space that they want to be in. And then there are just so many other varieties of roses and things. So if you love roses, maybe invite a little rose climbing up your wall here. See this little space here? Take time, make some beautiful food and go and sit with your family or friends. Have a little climbing rose at the side. Isn't that lovely? Elements of whimsy, so much charm, an emphasis in structure, and then a looseness around it. These are fantastic garden design principles, whether you like a formal garden, a cottage garden, just a vegetable patch, or anything in between. If you're a modern garden lover, if you like native plantings, woodland gardens, anything is fantastic. So really there's an emphasis on the color, the shape, the size of the bloom. Some beautiful dahlias here. This looks like a hollyhock. It looks like a hollyhock or a hibiscus. Perennial geranium here. Then you have some beautiful campanula, one of my favorites. Climbing roses, and then you have this lovely astrantia, beautiful for shade gardens, magical little flower. And here's a beautiful, productive potager garden. It's just so full of flowers, so full of color. It's so beautiful. There is a relaxed feel to it, but it's very functional. And also very whimsical and beautiful. I love the structure of the fence. I love the pot. There's a little pot here of basil. And then you have, you know, tithonia, Mexican sunflower here, beautiful dahlias. There's a lot of really bright, beautiful colors in gardens here, but such a productive garden. You have the boxwood hedges all around. So in the potager, and in your potager garden, even having that formality to it is really beautiful. And you have all of this abundance with the formality and the structure, and it's also just very, very practical. A beautiful little potting table here. Don't you want to just climb into that picture and just hang out in that garden? You want to come with me? Let's do it. Everything looks so healthy and beautiful. And lots of zinnias and cosmos, and you have tons of beautiful, fun stuff. But there's just such an emphasis on the plant itself. There's beauty in all of these gorgeous edible plants. So really playing with the beauty of that as well. You know, I mean, a lot of artichokes are grown for their beautiful purple flowers and for their structure, but you can eat them. They're beautiful. You know, chard is wonderful for beauty. You know, it's got a rainbow chard is one of the first things I ever grew. It's really easy one to get going and fun. Look how abundant and beautiful. Oh, my word. We could keep going and going and going. Sunflowers are very quintessentially French crop that's grown here all around. We've seen, you know, a lot of beautiful, beautiful plants, heucheras and tons of, you know, all kinds of different roses and different shrubs. And yeah, it's just a very fun thing to be experiencing a different type of gardening and seeing it kind of from the ground, you know, like being able to really get in there. And we've visited so many gardens at this point, and we've also just walked around and just peeked over fences and looked at different people's gardens that are just home gardeners. And I feel so inspired and so excited to start this gardening season. So I hope you found some inspiration in this video. Maybe we just hung out for a little bit and were able to chat about some plants and some inspiring garden design elements. But just know that gardens take time to grow and evolve. With a little patience and planning, you can create something truly special. I hope this video inspired you maybe to start your own French garden journey. If you do start something like this, please do let me know in the comments. I love reading what you're up to and how your gardens are evolving. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help us out. All right, that's it. Merci et bonne journée. Au revoir.